live, and it's live with Joan. So here we are. Sometimes this new platform and Facebook takes a few minutes to get together, but here we are, and we have a great guest coming up. And for a moment, as people come on and we get to say hi to everybody, I want to just reflect upon what we've done here in the Facebook Live. Obviously, we've had some very fun lives over the last 3 years, if you can believe it. But also in this particular series, I feel like we are really hitting our stride in the how to help animals. And we've been looking at a really global scale and looking at even at an individual level. So we've had some amazing guests, and we're about to just put it into a new stratosphere here. But I think it's really important to just take a moment to review what we've done. And we've looked at our own fears, our own emotions around helping at that level. We've looked at sacred activism. We've listened to Sarah McCrum about loving money and how money is an energy that can help us when it comes to helping animals. And we've had activists through photography like Sophie Gamont, and we've had a wonderful rescue last week with Jill Angelo. So there have been all sorts of ways that we've learned about helping animals on a local to global scale. And we're going to continue. And in this next little kind of micro series within the series, we're really going to look at wildlife. We've looked at, and we had, of course, Ellie from the Gentle Barn. So we've looked at things more in the domestic realm, and we're really going to dive in. And I wanted to say hi to people. Are people coming on, Claudia?
Yes, we have Sue Harris.
Hi, Sue. Sue has been to the White Lions with me.
Yes, she has. Maureen Bissonette, good morning. Leslie Williams, Ayat, Jane Wu, good morning, Jane. Good morning. Kristen Hedberg, Maria Daddario, Joyce Lee Leggett. She says, it's so happy it's Tuesday again.
Hooray. I know, Tuesday's my favorite day because we're here.
Me too. And Charlie Kale says, this series has been enlightening and amazing. Grateful for every one of you here. And Val Smith says, good morning. So we've got some people coming on.
Okay, cool. So if you're new to me, my name is Joan Ranquet. I'm an animal communicator, author, TEDx speaker, and founder of Communication with All Life University. And the school is a program for people to learn animal communication or become an animal communicator, learn energy healing or become an energy healer. And we're opening up the whole nature and wildlife part of the school. We've got lots of fun classes coming up. We have Marie Christine with Subtle Energies with Marie Christine, Subtle Energies for Animals with Marie Christine. And is that March 7th? I think it's soon. Marie Christine came to the White Lions with me too. We've got the Spring Intensive, which everybody that's going to be here live, type in and say, I'm going to be there live. I think we still have one spot left if you want to come to the Spring Intensive live. Otherwise, we've got lots of virtual spots left, and we'd love to have you. It's 3 days of animal communication, 3 days of EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique tapping for animals, and 3 days of animal communication in sanctuaries. And if we were in South Africa, we would include the White Lions, of course. And then April 27th, we start Animal Communication Level 1. So if you can't do the intensive, but you want a pretty immersive from home experience, Animal Communication Level 1 is very fun. And then we have Energy Healing for Animals starting May 12th. And so it all just kicks up again. So I'm going to let Claudia introduce our guest.
Okay. In the global crisis that treats lions as a killing commodity in cross-border trade, Linda Tucker has dedicated her life to the solution. After being rescued by a Sangha medicine woman from a life-threatening encounter with the Pride of Lions in 1991, Linda Tucker gave up a career in the international marketing to become a conservationist. She has dedicated her life to ensuring the well-being of the critically endangered white lions, regarded as sacred animals, yet amongst the world's most targeted trophy. Over 3 decades, she has campaigned for their sovereignty against the legalizing practices in South Africa's notorious cuddle and kill lion industry. She's raised millions of dollars to secure a vast wilderness in the heart of UNESCO's Kruger to Canyons biosphere, an ancient sacred natural site and one of the last viable lion ranges on the planet, where she and her team have successfully reintroduced white lions back to their natural ecosystem. Together with global indigenous leaders, she had a resolution passed, Resolution 33, Wildlife Conference in Mexico 2009 and Bioneers 2018, to have the white lions and all climate indicator species protected by international law. Her pioneering initiatives include the establishment of the Academy for Lion-Hearted Leadership, now online at https courses.lionheartedleadership.org. We will post that in the chat. Mm-hmm. And the Star Lion Eco-Educational Program for Emerging Youth Leadership Worldwide. She is the CEO and founder of Global White Lion Protection Trust and the Linda Tucker Foundation. Author of Mystery of the White Lions.
One of my favorite
Saving
books.
the White Lion. Right?
One of my favorite books, sitting right there.
Me too. I have it too. Saving the White Lions and Lion-Hearted Leadership and the 13 Laws. And she is a TEDx speaker, and you could find the title is Ignite Your Lion Heart. I speak for the lions. Mm. So here I'm going to bring Linda on now.
So she can speak for the lions with us. Hooray. Hello.
Hey, roars of greetings, Joan, and everybody.
Yes, it's always... For people that don't know, Linda's one of my favorite people, and I have had lots of fun with her here. She did the Lion-Hearted Leadership class here, and we're hoping to get her back. And I've taken people to the Lion Heartlands a couple of times. But I want to say that for me, I remember my first book came out with Hay House, and I was going through a Hay House catalog, and I saw this book, Mystery of the White Lions, and I was like, oh my God. And I ordered it from Hay House, and I remember getting it from the UPS guy, and I started shaking before I even opened it, right? Like I knew it was so big and important. And I opened the package, and there was this book, and it just held so much power for me that, well, I didn't mean to, but I kind of stalked Linda, and it's worked out well. So I just wanted to share that story, just how powerful and profound that book is and the work that she's doing. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so very much. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that book was based on 10 years of prior research and direct connection with the white lions themselves, as I dedicated my life to returning them back to the wild. So I can imagine it really touched your heart, because it's so close to the story of animals at this time and what they have to teach humanity and always have done.
Yeah. So I would love, I know that there are people that are new to you and your story, so I would love for you to start with just a little bit about your first encounter, and then I have lots more to ask you and go into.
Well, this is really a story that I should share with everyone around a fire under African skies, starlit skies. I could keep you busy for some time, but essentially it was a life-threatening encounter in the middle of the African bushveld where I had rashly gone out. Now we're talking about 1991, go back to a starlit night. And I was in the back of an open Jeep. Think of a World War II Jeep, very close to the ground, open. I went out with a couple of friends. This was before the days of so-called safaris. Wilderness was wilderness. And we ended up hitting a tree stump, breaking the axle of the vehicle, finding ourselves trapped in the middle of 24 lions who were very angry because we'd invaded their space, and they were agitated. They started closing in. Remember, this is the day before cell phones or even radios. That's how we communicate in the wild these days. But there was no way of connecting with the outside world. And as we panicked, so the lions became more and more agitated because we were behaving like prey. They were behaving like predators, actually. And we smelt like fear. I know you've been working with the concept of fear and overcoming your fear. If we had truly been respectful and followed the laws of animal communication, we would have understood that actually we were invading their space. But it was absolutely terrifying because it was pitch dark. We had a little light attached to the battery of the vehicle, which was fading as the battery ran out. And I don't know what's worse, seeing someone pulled off the vehicle, torn to shreds, eaten in front of you, or not seeing them because you've lost the light and just hearing the screaming. It's a primordial terror, the kind of nightmares that we wake up from screaming, but it was real. And, there was no solution to it because no one knew where we were. And we were behaving in this way that's going to bring about a fatality or more than one. And then the most amazing thing happened. Walking out of the darkness on foot with a little baby strapped to her back came this indigenous medicine woman, and she was walking almost in trance but completely aware of her environment. And the lions became calm, and she climbed into the vehicle with this little baby sitting in front of me and was completely calm. And if I think back on it now, she was holding a little lamp, but effectively she ignited a light in my heart that was a fuse that burnt and burnt and burnt until finally it exploded in my face years later. And I realized I was an advertising exec at the time, working out of Paris, Milan, London. I went back to that world after I'd been rescued from the situation by this amazing indigenous woman. And then I realized, as this light suddenly ignited a time bomb in me, that I had to give up that allure of the consumer world that we're all trapped in. And I realized truth lies back in that pride of lions in Africa with this amazing woman. And I gave up everything, my career, my house, my everything. Gave it up, went back to Africa to find this woman. And essentially she said to me, it's taken you a long time to wake up. I've been waiting for you. And then began my work in committing my life to nature. And it's been an incredible journey. I know we're going to speak a little more about it, but unbelievably challenging and unbelievably fulfilling at the same time. I would not have changed a single day. But there were, well, are we going to speak about it, Joan? What was involved or where we're going with this?
Well, I wanted people to have a little bit of history because I want them to understand that then you went out and found how you got started with your pride.
Right. Well, this was 1991. That event happened. So we're talking about 3 decades ago. And returning, finding out how she had communicated with the lions was my first introduction to interspecies communication from an expert, an indigenous medicine woman who regarded the lions as family. That is why they didn't harm her. That is why she knew she was totally safe. That is why she put her grandchild on her back, because it was a symbol of faith that this is her family. And in fact, humans had invaded their space. The reason being that a lioness had just given birth to cubs. A little white lion cub was born that night. and they were protecting that space. And she pointed out to me that we were the aggressors. And then she shared with me an amazing knowledge system that if you show love and respect to nature, nature will never harm you. Nature will return favor in love and respect. And that has been the rule that I've always followed since then in any action I took, which involved setting up, well, first of all, it involved researching who the white lions are. Why are they regarded as sacred animals? Why are they persecuted? And I discovered that there was a mafia industry operating in the middle of that ecosystem, removing these animals from their endemic lands, sending them to remote places, including Las Vegas in the States, with the illusionists Siegfried and Roy, and other places for a huge amount of money, and then trophy hunting them in the wild to extinction. So by the time I responded to this call from the lions, because they were really, it was a wake-up call, by the time I responded, white lions were extinct in the wild because of all these forced removals from their natural lands. And my task was not only to return them to the wild, but to protect them there. And that has been the last 30 years, and involved establishing a non-profit organization called the Global White Lion Protection Trust, raising literally millions of dollars to protect land within their ecosystem, because I managed to track down some white lions that were held in abominable conditions where they were being bred to be killed. And I managed to free and rescue a white lion that was actually a prophetic lion that had been prophesied by indigenous medicine I was working with. And they said that no matter what humanity does in destroying nature, nature will always hold sacredness. Nature holds the divine plan, and we are to return to nature with a sense of deep reverence and love. And then they informed me that there was going to be a lioness born in a place of great sacred significance. And in a little town in South Africa called Bethlehem, on Christmas Day, a white lioness was born. But this town was one of these places where they breed lions they've stolen from the wild to kill them. They breed them for the bullet. And there's a 2 or 3 step process. The first step is that they breed them, these little baby cubs. Then they offer them to tourists who think that they're very cuddly and cuddle them. And then when they can, when they little lions, they even walk with them for a price. And then those tamed lions end up being shot as tamed trophies. Trophies are a lion or another animal who's been shot by hunters commercially, and their heads or their bodies are stuffed as taxidermies on walls. And that's what happened to these tame lions.
But I want to real quick point out that because that was one of the things I wanted to talk about before we go back to the Bethlehem. Like, that cuddle to kill industry is huge, and it is absolutely a step-by-step process, so that when you hear that somebody goes lion hunting, they're doing nothing but getting out in a yard with lions walking toward them because they're tame.
Or Joan, you've just been cut for a second. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it cut for a moment. But Joan was explaining that it's it's a sequence of events. Now, in the 90s, when I first got involved in opposing this, it was in its emergence. And at that stage, there were mafia networks involved. They knew what they were doing was illicit. And they were linked with arms dealing, trade in animal parts and possibly other nefarious activities. And they started this whole industry. So it was an international industry that was largely underground. But what happened after the millennium is that it became linked to the tourism industry. And that was even worse because many tourists didn't know that they were funding this industry and were in fact a lucrative part of a to kill factory process where these tame lions had two options. Either they were, as Joan was explaining, offered to trophy hunters as tame lions who'd been handled again and again and again and again by humans and were tame. They'd literally walk up to a hunter and be blasted to death. And then in this whole process of campaigning against this horrific industry that was fed by international tourism, something even worse emerged. And that was, as we started shutting down this industry, then it became, it morphed into the lion bone trade, where tame lions were put into cages after they'd been handled. And because this was an international, or is still an international trade to the Eastern countries, China, Korea, Laos, they would not, they are consuming lion bones as a fake medicinal product. And all they wanted was the body parts. So lions would literally be starved to death for their skeletons, which were sent across borders to these places. And I know this sounds too horrific and too macabre to contemplate, but we're going to go on.
We have to talk about this, though. This is the discussion that's up, right, in the world right now.
Exactly, and we will focus on the solutions, but you need to know the horror, and then you need to know how to heal your heart, or keep this wounded heart that is filled with love. That is what drives you to recognize the solutions. And maybe, Joan, we can just speak at some point about a lion-hearted leadership activation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Deal with that despair that this brings about in
on my list.
Good. So we'll get to that, but I just need to lay out how abominable this is, and the worst of it in my years of activism, because I wasn't there's dual process. I was campaigning against this on the one hand, and I was involved in the solution on the other hand. And that's really how I'm going to advise you, is to know all about the problem, but to focus on the solution and recognize that you have the tools to make a difference.
That's the best thing on the planet, because we still have to process it emotionally, and yet we have to be able to see and be part of the outcome. And by processing it emotionally can be campaigning against, can be protesting, can be just crying on behalf of everyone. It can be whatever it is that how you process, how you can help, but always maintain the outcome being way better than anything we've even thought of.
Exactly.
One thing I would love to touch upon before we go back to the Bethlehem story is what the significance of the white lion in particular is for the indigenous people there, and how important this sacred work that you're doing specifically with the white lion is.
So we know that all of nature is sacred, but certain animals in the ecosystems are prophetic animals in our time of virtual system collapse. They're showing themselves as part of ancient prophecy to remind humanity that we're in this time of miracles and wonder, but also this time of potential collapse if we are not engaging. Actually, let me rephrase that. What I've really come to understand from the teachings of nature and through constant ceremonial connection with Indigenous elders around the globe, is that the solution is actually manifesting itself. Our role is to be part of it, and to stop believing that it is an absolute disaster that is irreparable. We need to identify that when we bring our natures into alignment with Mother Nature, we have the key to solve things and contribute in our own unique way to a miracle that is taking place at our time. Despite humanity's madness, there's a miracle that's taking place in our planet, in these natural places. So to answer your question, Joan, that was a bit of a long answer.
But it's a perfect answer, because we have to be reminded, especially right now with things going on like Ukraine and all of that, that there are always miracles. And that, again, goes back to, we process what's going on, but we stay focused on, we have the outcome, the way better outcome than we could have even come up with.
That really is the key. I'm sharing this with everyone because I've lived it. I've lived through atrocities. It got much worse than I've even described to you, where CITES, the Convention for the International Trade of Endangered Species. So I used to think as a conservationist that CITES was the multinational organization that protects endangered species. But
no,
there you have
it. Ends up being a giant gun show.
Essentially, yes, because the legislation around it legalized the lion bone trade. And what that meant was that suddenly these triad mafia rings, you know, the kingpins of an underground industry were suddenly legal in trading carcasses of lions who were once baby cubs cuddled by tourists. I mean, that is hell on earth. I'm sorry. This was just an abomination like you cannot imagine. And there were quotas being agreed by international law of dead lions being sent across waters to different countries. And what it brought about is it ignited the heart of humanity in different ways. It ignited global marches. We were part of galvanizing marches in, it was 62 cities marched simultaneously calling for this abomination to stop. And then that march galvanized and pretty much doubled the next year, really activating the hearts of humanity around the globe. You might even remember the Cecil event that was part of that. Even airlines started looking at solutions, and some airlines said, we will not carry dead lions as cargo. Singapore Airlines was one of the culprits, and we as activists targeted the airlines, and then they realized that their clientele was boycotting them, and they changed their policy. What I'm saying is I'm giving you a glimpse of the worst horror and then the solutions embedded in the way that civic movements started rising, where ordinary people, you know, off the streets were starting to influence change by the way that they directed their support, their social media campaigns, and their money.
I was going to say, and their money, because the money, you know, power only really will recognize money. I mean, there are some good-hearted, lion-hearted leaders on occasion, companies like Patagonia and things like that. But for the most part, the rest of corporate America, anyway, is going to be follow the money.
But boycotting an airline was so effective, and their reputation was so effective, that they changed their policy. I mean, I'm giving you these examples so that you realize that as part of a consumer in this whole horrendous consumer model, you can influence change by directing your money in a responsible way, a conscience-based way. That is how you can instantly
in everything you do, whether it's buying something that has plastic, whether it's in every single little way, directing your money is a way of basically voting that's more powerful than voting.
And also recognizing that this is a whole system. This is about whole system change. And how we do that is that every unit, every cell can potentially affect the whole. So if you see yourself as a point of light in a system that is going to change, it's going to move towards the light, and it will leave the dense parts behind. And as you change the system, you link up with other points of light, as Joan and I am doing at this very time. That's, again, how we influence change. You can only really influence to the best of your ability, but that is enough. If you are committing to the best of your ability, that is enough.
Yeah. So going back to the prophecy about this baby born on Christmas Day in Bethlehem.
So how is that? I mean, my entire life, once I recognized that these are sacred animals, and then I recognized all of nature's sacred. But let's start with the white lions because they are so luminous. I was then told as part of this prophecy that when you become conscious of sacredness in nature, it's everywhere. And my background is as a Cambridge trained academic, and my training was in ancient symbolism. So I was told by these medicine people that I am specifically appointed to work with the white lions because I can understand the symbolic language. And they said, do not miss the signs. This is nature's way of saying, no matter what humans do by way of desecration, by way of destroying the earth, they cannot. Sacredness predates humanity. Sacredness is the divine coding in nature. And we are being tested to the last moment to find our way back into an intelligent system that is divinely created. So essentially, when it came to this baby born in Bethlehem on Christmas Day, they were saying, you have the means to understand the symbolism. Do not miss the signs. There's a prophetic white lion that is going to be born, not in the ecosystem, so do not miss the signs. And what happened was that I had an activist friend who was in one of these abominable breeding factories. He had found his way into it thinking it was a legitimate scientific breeding program. And then he uncovered the horrors. He contacted me and said, I need to give you access to one of these death camps. It is a nightmare. And I was on my way making this pilgrimage to this little town called Bethlehem. I hadn't put the clues together. Mm-hmm. And on my way there, he contacted me. It was Christmas Day. I was traveling during the holidays. And he said, this white lion cub has been born in this death camp. And I suddenly realized, boom, Christmas Day, Bethlehem. There was a whole stellar alignment. It was an eclipse, okay? I'm giving you this. It's relevant because everything that happens on Earth in nature and in our lives is linked to a much greater cosmic plan. And the mythology around the white lions is that they are stellar beings. They are angelic beings. So here is this little cub born in Bethlehem on Christmas Day, this dark heart of the killing industry. And she was born at a time when the planets align with the galactic center. So it was a moment of absolute divine alignment. And I mean, can you imagine meeting this pure essence of pure Christ essence of love? And then knowing the horror of the context, because her mother had been stolen from the wild, had been forced to a cage, had been separated from her newborn cub through the brutal circumstances, And here it's been offered to tourists to hug. This was in the year 2000, Christmas Day 2000, before this whole industry really burgeoned. And I was there to uncover the horror, and this baby cub is presented to me. I mean, I was weeping as I held this little lion lamb to my heart, weeping with outrage and pure motherly love. That just the mix of emotions was so overwhelming that it was an unbearably beautiful moment. And I made a pledge to that little cub that I would give my life to returning her back to the wild. And it took me 6 years to honor that pledge. Every single day of, campaigning. I had to get a legal team to oppose our government. I had death threats. It was a nightmare of daily challenges, but ultimately I saw her and her cubs return to the wild. So it was a triumph at the end of the day.
And so you live in the Timbavati. You live in an area where you continue to secure lands. And how many lions do you live with now?
Part of what made it so challenging is that I couldn't return her to the wild where trophy hunting continued to take place. It was like returning her back to where she'd been forcibly removed. And I became aware that I had to purchase large tracts of land. So I needed help from around the world because you work with thousands of hectares. And so I managed to raise funds sequentially for more and more land. And it's specific land. It's the land where the white lions originated, which is an ancient sacred site on a golden meridian in the earth, which has been protected by, I had to protect it in the middle of the heartland, and then together with the knowledge systems of indigenous nations around the world, linking the white lion sacred knowledge with the white buffalo of the 12 nations of America, with the spirit bear of British Columbia, with the white raven, with the white reindeer. These are all animals I was coming to explain that are occurring in natural circumstances, showing that we're in a climate crisis. They're all white animals holding the codes, the original codes, but also showing the solution, because the prophecies around all these animals are to unite humanity in one consciousness of peace on earth across all divides. So here's a very interesting thing, Joan. You mentioned the invasion, and I believe that Kiev, the capital, is at risk right now. It's very interesting that that's on the same golden meridian as the white lions, who are here to create peace on earth, and then humanity, you have this whole invasion. And I believe that it's an opportunity for consciousness raising in humanity. Then, just like we were working with this lion crisis, it's an opportunity for humanity to take responsible action against that kind of warmongering, sanctions.
Absolutely.
There are to reevaluate our governments. How effective are our governments in actually modeling what peace looks like? And if they're not doing it, we as civic movements can pray, can visualize it, and do what we can and to oppose what is taking place.
And to continue to be peace in our own worlds, our own realms that rivets out and magnetizes more.
Absolutely. And one way of doing that is to work with nature, because nature understands peace. It understands the balance the equilibrium in which everything is actually gifting to the greater good of the whole. That's what an ecosystem is. Everything has its unique role. Everything gifts its identity to the greater good of the system. And therefore, everything is receiving gifts all the time because everything is gifted. And if we learn those lessons, which we are starting to learn as enlightened humanity, we are starting to model what peace looks like, what healing and regeneration looks like.
Absolutely. I want to, before we go into the lion-hearted leadership, which you've created through the work that you've done, you have, so you have a lot of land and continue to get more land and get more lions, and your lions are thriving. But you deal with some very real threats that people in America, people in Europe wouldn't understand. So tell us a little bit, like you've had death threats and you have an anti-poaching fence. It's a very real thing that you live with that we have no idea about, and I would love for you to share a little bit about that.
So in those early days, I got threats from this mafia-like industry because I was exposing it. And then when it morphed into the whole connection with tourism, it was so big that it didn't bother about me because they felt they'd won, basically. But I continued to campaign against it in every way possible, including at a parliamentary level. And finally, during the COVID period, actually, our government has committed to shutting down these death camps, to shutting down this industry.
Awesome.
And that is just awesome. That change is possible. So that's what happened on that front, on the whole industrialization of lions. On the other hand, I'm working in an ecosystem to restore the ecosystem. And when I say I am working to restore it, I need to correct myself. The lions do that. My role is simply to ensure they have safe space to do their natural role. And I'm sure many of our participants will know the extraordinarily exciting ecological event that happened in Yellowstone Park, where the ecosystem was collapsing, and then as a scientific experiment, wolves were returned back to the ecosystem, and as the apex animal in an ecosystem, they rebalanced the whole system by regulating the elk who were overfeeding on their habitat, and all the way down the system, such that everything restored itself. It's the most amazing example of what now is called trophic cascading, what the apex animal does to restore all of nature. And that's the pyramid of life, the role of the apex animal, which was not well understood before. Everyone felt, how are we going to restore ecosystems? We've got to start from the ground up. Now we realize from the top down is equally, if not more effective than starting from the seed base and thinking, how on earth are we going to restore a devastated land? So I live in the ecosystem. I've created safe space for the lions who are restoring the ecosystem. And I believe they're also restoring, let me just say, I'm inspired by them and the principles they represent to help restore human systems, and that's lion-hearted leadership. But to pick up Joan's point, in the middle of the ecosystem, we're really campaigning for the survival of all species, and that is linked to poverty relief. You can't truly be a conservationist today without addressing the issues of inequality and poverty on the borders of these areas. It's not just protecting an area for wealthy people to come and hunt because they can afford it. The question of of protecting species is directly linked with dealing with poverty issues. And this would take us into a whole nother discussion,
right.
but
Socioeconomics of what a lot of these areas are is, I think it's a huge discussion, but we'll stick to this.
yes, but essentially what we're saying is there's opportunities for regeneration both within the ecosystem, within human systems, and that's linked to regenerative farming methodologies, which are available today. And we're involved in establishing those on the borders of the ecosystem, which
That's
creates
amazing.
huge livelihoods. So that actually creates a buffer for nature to flourish again.
Because it's people that are in poverty that get talked into doing the things that poaching, what have you, for bigger systems. Unfortunately, it's local people that may be involved, and so you have to secure against.
Absolutely, they're easily persuaded because they're so poverty stricken.
Right.
And so most conservationists talk about poachers as if they're the real problem. But if they understand that trophy hunting is, to me, wealthy poachers, and
Right.
poachers, people who are poaching often are simply trying to survive.
And feed their family.
And feed their families, exactly.
Yeah. All right, so we have to wrap up here in a minute, but I want to say that, again, I want to have you back here and we have a classroom now. There's all kinds of changes. The lions are still there in your bedroom. Anyway, and Abby is right here waiting for you to come back. But
no, I don't have favorites. I love them all your animals.
Good. Well, they all love you and they want you to come back. And so one day, we will host something in person, but you have an online program that's amazing, and we'll put the link in here. And it really is almost exactly what we're talking about here through this series, as far as how do I take all my feelings and my superpowers and be part of this larger ecosystem, right? And a lot of times our feelings, I always say, your mission is bigger than your feelings, because our feelings, like, oh my God, I can't do it, it's going to hurt, it's going to break me apart. But the truth is, we have to be broken apart in many ways in order to walk through the door with that open, almost bleeding heart, but strength. So share your lion-hearted leadership 13 laws.
Thank you, Joan. So that is online. Will we be able to post it? Because it's a brilliant training. It's essentially recognizing how simple these things are. These are timeless, simple, I call them laws, because nature is the originator of all these laws, but they are inherent in us. It's a matter of remembering them. And the training is so easy, so stimulating, but that by the time you've gone through it, you are on your path. You recognize that you are unique. You can make a unique difference. And of course, you find your pride. That's the seventh law, where the first law is origination. Of course, you are original. Seventh law, by the time you get to it, is, so the seventh law is collaboration. Find your pride. First law is follow your paw print, your original paw print. But you can't do it alone. You do it with those who have the same heart. As Joan and I, work together in different ways, but with the same heart that
come together. Yes, the same heart.
And so it's a brilliant, simple, accessible training. And once you through that, the advanced training takes place in white lion territories with the lions. But you can do this online. I'm very present in the training as well. And I loved doing a workshop in Joan's space in LA, outside LA. That would be scheduled for the new year. I think we're going to be doing that next year.
Definitely. Well, it's been such a wonderful time with you, as it always is. We've done a few of these interviews, but this has been really, I think, really rich. Claudia, has anybody been commenting?
Oh my goodness. I think what's going to need to happen is we're going to have to go back and go through there's a deep conversation going on about people saying that they're having physical reactions, that they feel like this is, it's very powerful. So we will go back and comment and respond to everybody. And Linda, some people want to reach out to you directly. So we'll put in the contact info for the White Lions Trust.